I very much appreciate your time.
It's all good. I appreciate being on. So,
what do you think are the biggest differences between you and Chip Roy?
well, Chip Roy is a constitutionalist, and so am I. And so we have a lot of the same ideas, or same values, I should say. We probably don't have any of the same ideas. I'm a business owner, and I've been in the business world 30 years, and so I've never heard him once talk about job creation. Not once, and I've been to a lot of speeches in 5 months. I've never heard him once talk about how we grow the economy. He and I agree we need to absolutely shrink the size of government, but we need to fix our banking. He doesn't talk about that. He doesn't think outside the box. My opponent has had one central big idea in the whole campaign on how to fix everything, and that is he knows Ted and Ted knows him. I'm not Donald Trump, but business people think differently than my opponent, who has been basically his whole career in politics in one form or another, running a super PAC against Donald Trump, working for a think tank. And so you can get a career politician who has needed the endorsement of Ted Cruz and half of Washington and $2 million probably from super PACs by the time we're done with this in order to get close to winning. Or you can get the guy that's actually from here that wants to represent not only our Constitution and our values, but our local interests.
Some of that money is being spent to put your picture next to Nancy Pelosi and send out all these mailers, and I guess they're up on TV now.
Oh yes, you know it's a sign of desperation. Clearly, trying to say that I am somehow on the same page with Nancy Pelosi, that somehow I'm going to make Nancy Pelosi a speaker. Nancy Pelosi is probably going to sue for defamation because I'm over there with Attila the Hun. You know, I want to have civil conversations about real ideas and real problems like Social Security, but I am a very conservative guy. I'm a constitutional conservative. And so it's just a bunch of rubbish. It's straight up lies.
Is there anything in this race that you think is not being talked about, an issue that should be getting more press attention that is not?
I think the press should be giving more attention to the fact that 80% of my opponent's money comes from outside the state. I think the press should be really considering that, you know, my opponent, Chip Roy, minus Ted Cruz equals 3%. I mean, he carried him into this race. He's a man who doesn't live in the district. He cannot vote for himself. He did not vote for himself and will not in this runoff or in the first stage. His wife won't. And because he isn't from here. And the money's not from here.
The Republican voter might be thinking, though, to themselves, I like Ted Cruz. So if Ted Cruz says, vote for this person, why shouldn't I listen?
Well, I like Ted Cruz too. I voted for him. I've given him money in a small room. But Ted Cruz is a sinner just like I'm a sinner and you're a sinner. And Ted Cruz was wrong about Donald Trump and what he said about him at the National Convention. And he's wrong about Chip Roy and trying to send his emissary to the 21st District instead of receiving a representative from the district to Washington. Chip Roy shouldn't be in this race. It should be me and Mr. Nagley. And if Ted hopefully will come to his senses, and I look forward to working with him when I'm in the legislature. But, you know, he needs to get back in his lane. He was wrong about the president. He's wrong now. And I'm sure that I've been wrong about some things, and I can appreciate that he can still be a constitutional conservative.
Priorities of yours, very pro-life. What would you advocate for policy-wise?
I think that life should be protected from conception to natural death. And I would certainly be willing to make the exception for rape, incest, and the life of the mother if we can agree that everything else should be protected. And, you know, at the very least, America should have laws protecting the unborn to the same extent that Europe does. And in Europe, in Germany, for instance, you have to consult 2 doctors before you have an abortion. And abortion after 12 weeks is infanticide. And so we should have gotten to that point years ago.
When it comes to limited government, what are we doing and paying for that we don't need to be doing and paying for on a federal level?
That's a long list. If you just look at the 10th Amendment, it pretty much defines, or completely defines, what the federal government should be into, and the Constitution does. So I would give the lands back to the states and shut down the Department of Interior. I didn't say sell them. I said we should give them back to the states and the parks. The Indians should get their lands, and they're perfectly capable of running Indian lands. But certainly the Department of Education. Jimmy Carter gave that to us in 1978, and he was wrong. It hasn't worked. It's very interesting. I went to the Democrat Forum earlier in the year with the 4 different Democrats, and they hate testing even more than the Republicans hate testing. And you can't kill Common Core and really kill it if you don't kill the bureaucracy that creates it and recreates it. That's what bureaucracies do. So the Department of Education needs to go, because I believe in teacher liberation.
Are you supportive of a border wall across the whole southern border, physical barrier, or are you in the camp of a mix of technology and surveillance?
I completely support President Trump. And I've been saying the same things passionately and consistently for 5 years. And I believe that we should indeed seal the border, because it's not just about immigration, which it is about, it's about nationhood. And it should mean something to be a nation, and it should mean something to be a citizen. And so, yes, in places it's going to look like a wall. In other places, you have to literally water the cows. And so it may look like something else.
DACA, in your opinion, is amnesty, or is that a different issue?
No, they should get no amnesty. There doesn't need to be a new path to citizenship. If they want citizenship, they can join the army. We're trying to balance the law versus mercy. And if the left doesn't start realizing that our positions on the right are legitimate, they may disagree with them, and they may have different values, but they are legitimate, then they're not going to like what happens. But I think that we can probably come up with some solutions. But if the left doesn't want to work with us, well, then they're going to get shipped back home. I think that we should come up with a plan where, yes, they don't ever get a new path to citizenship, but we'll let them stay without citizenship. If they want citizenship, they can go back to the country where they are citizens, where they were born, and they can apply like everyone else.
I saw somewhere that you are for breaking up the banks. Is that true?
Breaking up the big banks.
The big banks.
Absolutely. We need to get back to Glass-Steagall. Getting rid of Glass-Steagall was a horrible idea. We need to get back to where a bank is an institution that takes in deposits and makes loans.